Well, the art of self-advocacy. I think that's where happiness comes from. When we learn how to speak our own truth, stand up for ourselves, be who we really are, uh, allow ourselves to stand out in a crowd and to celebrate the journey that we're on. So as we begin today, we're going to begin with a quote, which I believe Sharon has handy. Let me do this so I can see it. All too often, our so-called strength comes from fear, not love. Instead of having a strong back, many of us have a defended front, shielding a weak spine. In other words, we walk around brittle and defensive, trying to conceal our lack of confidence. If we strengthen our backs, metaphorically speaking, and develop a spine that's flexible but sturdy, then we can risk having a front that's soft and open. How can we give and accept care with strong back, soft front, compassion, moving past fear to a place of genuine tenderness? I believe it comes when we can be truly transparent, seeing the world clearly and letting the world see into us. Roshi Joan Halifax. When I think about that idea of having a soft front and a strong back, that really speaks to the idea of advocacy, not just for others, but for ourselves. It's really important to notice who we are and what our value is. And sometimes that gets forgotten. As we discover the power of self-advocacy and how to cultivate the confidence and assertiveness to speak up for ourselves, there's a great strength that comes from that. So I have my own personal story about this. When I was a little child, I was called Barbie. And when I went to school, I no longer liked being called Barbie because that made me feel like a baby. So I turned around and my name changed to Barb. And it stayed that way right through until in my late 30s, I thought, I kind of like the name Barbara, and maybe I could start using that. But there was a hesitance to correct someone if they used Barb instead of Barbara. But in my mind, there was like, how could I expect people to say all three syllables? Like, that's a lot to ask. Talk about low self-esteem. But that flipped, and I went, no, enough. And so I speak up. Not all the time now, because I'm not as attached to it as I was back then, but I do prefer Barbara. And often I will sit back when I am called Barb and sit back and just say, hey, I prefer Barbara. It's a little thing, I know, but when you think of how little that is, but how big it was in my mind, you start to see how fear is playing a role that it didn't need to. And so when we're looking at our stories and we're looking at the things we're willing to do or not do, we want to really pay attention to that internal voice. What's it telling us, and whether or not it's actually speaking truth. So learning to cultivate the confidence and assertiveness to speak up, whether it's the workplace or in your relationship or your community, we want to be able to stand up for ourselves. So I have an affirmation for you. Get your pens out. I confidently speak my truth and advocate for myself with clarity and strength. I confidently speak my truth and advocate for myself with clarity and strength. See, if we won't stand up for us, who would? It's really important that we learn how to stand up for ourselves. So I have a story that I wanted to share, and this is from Amber, and starts off with, to thine own self be true. So this is a classic phrase nearly everyone has heard by the time they take a high school literature class. Navigating the world as a girl and now as a woman, this motto has been my northern light as I navigate the challenging world as a woman. Let's start at the beginning. I was born into a traditional rural life kind of family. The adults worked blue-collar jobs and the kids played outside and helped with farm chores. And every Sunday, the family would go together for lunch. Men and women had particular roles within each family unit. As early as I can remember, it was evident that women were to be in the kitchen, cooking and cleaning. In contrast, men got to put their feet up in the living room to shoot the breeze and relax. I realized I didn't believe in these traditional roles during this time. Many times I sat in the living room to complete my homework. I was told I needed to be in the kitchen. I began my journey to self-advocacy and advocacy for women. Little did I know that the real challenge began when I entered the workforce. Bypassed the part-time work, expected sexism, and downright harassment that occurred daily, and cut to my first full-time job out of grad school. I was young and had a lot to prove, and even with my previous experience, I still had in mind, a very naive one at that I would have been taken seriously. Not only did I experience ageism, but I also got called honey, dear, or darling regularly by my superiors. It was infuriating, demeaning, and embarrassing. It was challenging to be taken seriously, and even more difficult to not lose my mind over the mansplaining I experienced and continued to endure. Did you know that at least 42% of women have experienced some form of gender discrimination at work? More specifically, women are 4 times as likely to be treated like they are incompetent due to their gender. I'm more surprised that the number isn't higher, which I can only attribute to the lack of reporting. Even in 2023, I find more and more that women are meant to be seen, not heard. If those statistics don't fire you up, let me take things a step further. After years of being looked down upon for being a millennial and a woman who clearly had nothing in her brain to contribute to the world, I found a new level of frustration when I began having health issues and sought care. These experiences lit a fire down inside me and are why I continue to advocate for women's issues and a resilient force. Even when I was forthcoming about my eating disorder past, some clinicians dared to mention my weight and the need to revisit my diet and exercise. It's dumbfounding the number of times that I've been told that the answer to my problems is to lose weight, or that some form of exercise and diet will magically make my depression and anxiety disappear. What makes it even better is when you read the doctor's notes, and the first thing you read is that the patient presented with obesity or is morbidly obese. Experiences of weight stigma can cause considerable harm. The research is out there, yet many healthcare providers still hold on to the antiquated belief that BMI is an indicator of health. BMI is a barrier to health. It is downright discrimination. It's no wonder that women are more likely to develop an eating disorder or have a disordered eating behavior. There's so much focus on women's bodies image that many pressing issues are. So what do we do in those situations? And this isn't just women. This is her story. And so she's talking about the importance of really finding yourself. And she says, take the journey to discover your passion. Talk to the women in your life, build your network of strong women who lift you up. Take advantage of mentorship programs. Be open-minded and understand different perspectives, and be a lifelong learner. Set boundaries. Don't strive perfection. Don't strive for perfection. And most importantly, be patient with yourself and give yourself grace. So sometimes when these things are going on, we can feel a little bit overwhelmed. We can feel a little victimized. But when we're self-advocating, when we're setting boundaries for ourselves, we stand strong. And in that strength, whether you're a man or a woman, regardless of your age, your abilities, the race, whatever these things are, we have the ability within us to stand up and begin to speak to and ask for the support that we need moving forward. And I know sometimes it's not easy, because when people are looking at you like you're unimportant or insignificant, it's hard to sometimes bolster that confidence so you can really speak your truth and let yourself be heard. And I know that hiding can seem like an easy thing to do, but I want to say that it is really a bad idea. There's no way that you're going to gain your strength and your passions and your purpose, all of that, if you are busily trying to, get along with everybody, or turn around and be best friends with everyone, or be, a quiet little mouse in the corner that nobody questions. So self-confidence and self-advocacy extend beyond asserting personal rights. They're expressions of our divine nature. And by affirming our inherent worth and infinite potential, we reinforce our truth as manifestations of the universal mind. So there's this, we teach that there's this one thing going on. There's the universe, God, spirit, first cause, whatever you want to call it. That energy, that essence is the only thing that exists. There's nothing else but that. And within that, we live, move, and have our being. Now, if it is powerful and intelligent, then we are that as well. If it is, the creative force of the universe, then we are created perfect, whole, and complete, regardless of this physical experience, regardless of how we might appear intellectually, regardless if we have a learning disability, or if we're gay, or if we're Black, or if we're a woman. None of that matters. And it does. Because we set boundaries. We actually teach people how to treat us. So when somebody treats us badly and we accept it, then we actually begin to set the stage for more of the same. So we want to start standing up for ourselves. We want to start speaking out in a way that allows us to really connect deeply with the core of our being. And even when we're afraid, bravery doesn't come from lack of fear. Bravery comes from our willingness to look it in the face and keep moving forward. Are you willing to look it in the face and keep moving forward? I remember when I was in my 20s, my late teens, my early 20s, and I worked for a newspaper in Calgary. And, when I was there, it was interesting. Here I was, this pretty little girl working in the classified, or not in classifieds, in the advertising department. And we would have our coffee station was actually in the back room, in the composing room, where the gentlemen were putting together all of the sheets, all of the pages, cutting things out. So we'd go in there, but every time I'd go in, there'd be whistles, there'd be cat calls, there'd be all kinds of stuff. And it was really, really uncomfortable. But I would just laugh along with the boys and would quickly leave. There was a part of me that didn't feel I had the right or the ability to stand up to them. And it actually took me many years before I did. So as we learn to advocate for ourselves, to use that creative power of thought to manifest the desired outcomes, we begin to recognize that this divine within is key. This inner authority inspires our thoughts and actions and intentions. And by acknowledging our divine essence, we confidently claim our affirmative prayers as realized, aligning ourselves with creative law that turns thoughts into reality. You see, we can take what it is we truly desire and begin speaking it, setting intentions. Setting an intention that wherever I go, I'm safe, secure, respected, and admired. And we begin to live into that truth. You see, when we set an intention, first thing, what happens is the universe steps in. Well, it doesn't really step in, but the universe supports that with a giant yes. And that yes gets really loud and really strong as we begin to really listen to it and believe in it. That's when it becomes the most powerful. When we understand that we're manifestations of the universal mind, we recognize the immense creative power of our thoughts, beliefs, and words. So if I believe that life is hard and difficult, I get to be right. Because for me, it will be that. There will be many things that come into my experience that I feel ill-equipped to deal with. But if I can draw within that divine strength, if I can bring that forward in my awareness, if I can begin to think along lines of what is possible, when I can say I can rather than I can't, I will rather than I try, rather than a maybe, a definite yes or no. It's up to us to stand for what we really believe in and what really matters. Now, I know in my life, I've settled a few times for less than what I actually wanted. And I remember years ago getting married, and I was 24. And as I'm getting, ready that morning, the thought crossed my mind, yeah, this will do for now. Wow, what a positive way to go into a wedding, into a marriage. This will do for now. And I wonder why there were challenges in that marriage. Maybe because I had such a low bar of what I expected out of it. And that got met. So when we listen to Amber's story, for example, to thine own self be true, that really says a lot. See, if we're being true to ourselves, we're going to catch ourselves when we settle for less than what we want. Because here's the thing, when you settle for less than what you really want, you actually get less than you settled for. Now, I don't know, that's not my quote. I don't know who coined that, but I love it. It is such a great quote, and so true, so true. So when we're thinking about the idea of self-advocacy, Ernest Holmes says that our thoughts and beliefs are essential tools in shaping our reality. And the quote that I have is, life is a mirror and will reflect back to the thinker what he thinks into it. Let me repeat that. Life is a mirror and will reflect back to the thinker what they think into it. So just ask yourself the question, what do I believe about me? What do I believe about me when the boss calls me into his office? Do I believe I'm in trouble? Or do I believe I'm getting a raise or a promotion? What do I believe? When I go to the doctor and have a bunch of tests done and the receptionist calls me back and says, you need to come back in, what is the thought process in my mind? Oh my God, no, I probably have cancer. Oh, I must be really sick. What's wrong? Anybody ever do that? Instead of sitting back and realizing that there could be really good answers that the doctor now has. When it comes to self-advocacy, cultivating positive self-belief and confidence is key. We have to believe in ourselves. We need to look at our strengths and then allow our weaknesses, instead of being judged as bad, to rather be a way of informing us of where we need support. Because the other side of self-advocacy is accepting support, allowing people to come in and assist, making sure that whatever you're needed, whatever is needed for you, whether you can handle it yourself, or if you can't, then you pass it along to someone that you trust. So we begin to build a network and we work together because each of us has different skills and talents. We can't all do everything. So stop thinking you can, right? I know I've been guilty of this. Of course I can do it all. Yeah, and then fall down with exhaustion and never get it all done. So we want to make sure that we are, cultivating that positive self-belief. And by affirming our worth and capabilities through our thoughts and words, we project confidence, which influences how others perceive and respond to us. One of the things I've noticed many times is when I've asked for what I really want, rather than what I think I'm going to get, generally I get more than I asked for. But when I have an intention in my mind, but I speak something less, I usually get even less than that. So the journey is about, what do I believe I'm worth? Not what do I think I'm worth, but what do I believe I'm worth? Because the thinking and belief have to match. If I think, of course I'm worthy, but deep down inside I go, oh man, like I'm such a loser. What happens is there's a disconnect, and that disconnect is going to manifest, and not as the higher vision, but rather as the lower. So we want to make sure that we're really living into our true life purpose. And often I'll hear people say, well, I don't know what it is. And that actually is not true, because we all know exactly who we are, where we're headed, and what we need to be doing. What we don't have in our conscious awareness is this understanding. So we can do treatment that go, I am consciously aware of exactly who I am, what I'm here to do, and what's the next step for me. And as we do that, we begin to, get this energy that builds up in us, and we begin to move forward, and we can start to see the path before us. And yeah, we won't have all the answers at the beginning, of course not. But we will have the next step. And when we take the next step, then the next one is revealed. And it's interesting how that works, right? There's this reciprocity in moving forward. Every time I take a step, another is illuminated for me. And this reinforces the importance of consciously shaping our inner dialogue. And we can use affirmations and find ways of reframing our negative thinking that helps us to build that confidence. And once we can stand up for ourselves at least once, that makes it easier to do it a second time, right? We get a little bit of faith that, maybe. In chapter 8 of The Science Mind, Ernest Holmes teaches, the power of God is within you. This is the divine authority which should be recognized and which should inspire every thought, every act, and every purpose. Every. Ooh, that's a big word, right? Every. Because we're not always there, are we? But let's strive for that. Let's strive to recognize that that is the truth. That divine nature, that divine authority should be recognized and should inspire every thought, every act, and every purpose. This principle underscores that we are such an expression of the divine, endowed with inherent worth and potential. And we've heard before, we are born perfect, whole, and complete. But I'm sure there's some of us who go, a lot of things, perfect ain't one of them. But the truth is, we're talking about our divine nature. We're not talking about the physical attributes we have, or the physical mistakes or failures we may have had. What we're talking about is our divine nature. And so when we recognize our divine nature is crucial for effective self-advocacy, as it empowers us to speak up with confidence that we are supported by a higher power. See, when we really get it, that there is this power and it's present within us, when we begin to really understand that, everything gets easier. And then our spiritual practices help, meditation and treatment can strengthen our connection to the divine, enhancing our ability to listen, to hear, and to respond. So we want to align with the universal laws. Want to begin to clearly tap into this idea of the universe's creative power which will help us to manifest our goals and bring them into being. So using techniques like visualization, clear intentions, practicing assertive communication, we align our self-advocacy efforts with universal principles. And that's the key to our freedom. This enhances our ability to be more than we ever thought we could be. The power of our thoughts, the strength of our divine nature, and the impact of aligning with universal laws are vital to our ability to advocate for ourselves and for others. Our beliefs shape our reality, and recognizing our inner divinity can inspire every aspect of our lives. So I invite you to really connect with the divine, to really begin to see yourself as perfect, whole, and complete, to acknowledge your brilliance, your intellect, and to release any past belief, any past doubt, fear, or worry. Join with me now in a brief meditation. Just taking a deep breath in, allowing your body to relax. Another deep breath in. And as you exhale, relaxing a little bit further. And one more deep breath. Yes. And relax. So we begin, knowing that there's this infinite power and potential. So imagine being in this huge bubble. It's a bubble of love and light. It's intelligent, it's creative, it's powerful, it's divine. And look around you as you're in here. Notice how you feel in the midst of this bubble. Feel strength surging through you. I confidently speak my truth and advocate for myself with clarity and strength. As I allow those words to sink in, I confidently speak my truth and advocate for myself with clarity and strength. And again, I let those words just enter my being, physical, mental, spiritual. And I choose to own those ideas. This is my new beginning. And I'm excited, grateful. So as you anchor this idea in your thoughts, in your body, in your soul, just say yes. Yes. I am the I am. And taking a deep breath in. And as you exhale, beginning to open your eyes. And being present back in this moment.